Says I can't access this number.
Touching sound.
Can you hear us now? Oh, now we can hear you. It's not loud yet.
Then we can't hear the room.
Oh, you can't hear us at all?
Chelsea was saying she can hear as well.
I can hear you.
Oh, you can hear? Okay, ooh, that's not good. Can you still hear us, Chelsea? Hey. And Christine, you're still you can't hear?
Yes, I can hear. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Now that we've got our technical issues sorted out, we'll call this meeting to order at 10:02. We acknowledge and respect the Indigenous peoples within whose traditional lands we are moving today. And a motion to adopt the agenda. There's no additions.
So moved.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion is carried. And the minutes have been received. Are there any errors or omissions?
No, look good to me.
All right, so we'll move into our delegations. Our first delegation is from Castle Switch and Rescue, and we've got Alana and Franz. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to have our treasurer join me this year. Although he tends to be a man of few words, so I'll probably say my words. So we submitted our 5-year draft budget. Our big project continues to be our potential new hall, which we're trying for. At our last board meeting, it was determined that we are going to have to put the project off by 1 year. So this will shift everything that's in this forecasted budget ahead 1 year. So we're hoping to finalize fundraising in 2026 and then be able to break ground in spring of 2027. So there were just some delays and the changes to the capital gaming grant for this year that threw us a little bit. We're probably going to have to take out a loan to be able to finish off the project and combine that with more fundraising. Let's see. It's been a busy year so far for the team. Last year we had 55 total call outs, and this year we're already at 50 on the year. I know our budget here specifically relates to road rescue. So let me see, our road rescue last year we had 12 calls, and then this year so far we're at 13 already this year. We've got 36 active members on the team right now. And so far to date, I ran the report this morning. We put in 5,674 hours of volunteer time this year as a team. And we do have a financial review coming up. That's what it's called, right? A review?
Engagement or the
Engagement. So it's not quite an audit. It's one step below an audit, but it's with Doan Grant Thornton LLP. So we're looking to have just a review. It's been years since it was done, and we're going for these large grants. So I figured it was good to make sure we've got all of our ducks in a row there. Anything you wanted to add?
Any questions? It looks like your grant request to us, which is when you see your whole budget, quite minimal, is going to remain at 30,000.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Supplemental?
Yeah, go ahead.
The building itself, so another, which I totally understand. I get why that would be. I know that you guys were looking at the community works funding. Do you know if you've had an answer on that? I believe you would not qualify at this point.
We kind of got brushed aside, so we assumed that we didn't. We never got a specific answer. We just got sent to a different person who would send us back to that person so it never really, we didn't get a clear response, honestly. But because we didn't have all of our ducks in a row either, we didn't really push back on the subject very hard on our end, honestly.
Okay, well, we should get a clear answer on that for you. I do believe, based on the changes to the grant criteria just within the last year, that you likely don't qualify.
Yeah.
But I do think we can follow up just to get.
We can look back and find out for sure, because I think we just kind of dropped things on our end. So.
Okay, maybe just loop me into that correspondence and then I'll make sure there's a final answer.
Sure.
That being said, I would say that if there's funding you need, I can't provide that kind of amount outside of community works, but I could look at another grant through community development similar to that. I think there was 25,000.
That's included in our savings.
In your capital, yeah. So I could look at that for 2026.
That would be great.
I don't know how much. I'm still working out commitments, but I could at least put something in there that would compensate for the lack of community works coming through.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I understand you've been talking to staff at the village about the land.
About our lease, yeah, the lease expires July 2026. That the land that we're hoping to build on. So, yeah, I've been following up with Robert on trying to get that extended. Some of the grants we're seeking, they say we need a long-term lease, but they don't specify what long-term is. So, yeah, but July 2026 isn't going to cut it. Yeah.
Through the chair, would you own the building at the end of it, or would the village own the building if it's village land?
We would own the building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just if it's a village owned building, that would definitely qualify for community works.
Right. And this estimate that's on here was for phase 1, which didn't include a floor or plumbing. We were really it would just be a gravel and no plumbing. It would really be a heated storage facility. Now that we're delaying things a year, we're hoping we had it broken down into 4 phases. So phase 1 is complete with clearing the land and prepping. And then we've got all the quotes together now. So this funding was for phase 2. And now we're hoping to just go all in one shot and get her done by taking this extra time to fundraise.
Thank you.
Did you have another question?
I did, and I'm not sure that you guys can answer this, but it kind of connects up to your shared user on that land, which is the fire department. I know that Chief Scoos was looking at a shared use agreement and then kind of long-term look at needs. I'm curious if there's any kind of update on where that's at and how that's playing out in terms of the building you're building. I know you need it, but I'm just wondering, as the fire department also, I know they're going to be out of space as well. So curious if you guys have been in those conversations, if there's any, I guess, updates on that, which I would also ask the fire department, but from Sarah's perspective.
I haven't personally been in the conversations, but I know they have been happening with Stefan and Nick have gotten together and chatted. And then I believe the user agreement is in the hands of RDCK being reviewed, was my understanding, and then come back to us for a review in our.
We had a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and because of there needing more room, so they're trying to kind of make use of the room we use right now. So, and we realized that nobody has enough space right now especially with new equipment coming. So, but that's not the fire department property, it's village property, which we are hoping to acquire down the road.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it would make things easier if you would be able to own the land for grants and all that stuff too. So, but that's already
Different
gone.
conversation.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But we are intending to keep our space in the existing building and then just utilize this for extra storage of all of our gear. That's a lot of it is outside right now, unsecured, and not heated.
The reason I ask, and maybe Stuart, this is more for your consideration, is that there's 3 users on that property. They're all out of space. And SAR's been working on this one for several years. But we already know from conversations with Chief Scoos that they're also really trying to figure out maximum use of space. So we had asked the chief and SAR to work together, which you guys are, but I don't know how strategic that overview is from a shared, like from a full use of that property perspective. Like it's kind of that everyone's in their departments, and I'm wondering if there's a way to check in around full use and the building that SAR's putting a lot of effort into. Not saying that you would then also have fire department stuff in there, but if there was one owner of it all, we'd be looking at a master plan for all users. So I'm curious how we support kind of getting that longer range view that is comprehensive of all the potential use down the road so that it supports everybody. I don't know if that makes sense, but.
Yeah, through the chair, you'd have to do a needs assessment. Get everybody at the table and talk about what your needs look like yesterday, tomorrow, and in 5 years. And try to build something that's going to meet those needs, right?
And is that
If everybody's at the table talking about the same property, saying, you have a project manager there, someone who could do design work, talking about how just no different than we're doing with our office space in Creston right now. Right? What do you actually need?
So I'm curious back through to SAR, because I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I just see this conversation happening siloed. Is that something that would be, like, I wouldn't assume SAR would take the lead on that, nor would I assume that Chief Scoos would take the lead on that. But is that something that would be advantageous to the shared use of the space? It's like a full needs assessment of everybody.
Yes, I would be concerned that it would delay. Like we've already got our drawings for our building and the architect paid for it. And all that is in place already. So I would worry about wasting those dollars if we were to change the plan at this point so far along.
And I think we didn't have anything constructive because of always the changing of the chiefs. Like
Yeah.
there was never that it's hard. Like that's what we had a meeting with the regional chiefs to
Third chief and yeah.
finally, because we warm up to the chief and then he's gone again. So it's hard to plan
Yeah.
with those short-term engagements.
We're always open to working together, though. I think the idea was that when we moved our stuff away from the side of the building, we would open up those spaces for more storage as well. And then, if we were to look at fencing and for secure, we would be able to share that outdoor space. But the indoor space is definitely all spoken for.
Yeah.
planned well. Yeah.
And something that I think we learned at the last meeting, when Chief Scoos was here, was the number of 3-story buildings in a community. Once it gets 5, then you have to have a ladder truck, which adds, further storage needs. So it actually does come back to fire, because we don't know what's going to happen. We might already darn close. We've got 2 I'm looking at, one on Front Street, and so we might be in that situation unless we put in actually in this castle and area and specified area D. I don't know what there is out there, and whether we have to consider changing our bylaws to allow no more 3 stories unless there's a contribution to fire to facilitate that, because that's a huge expense. One truck already is for $750,000. When you make it a ladder truck, it's probably
more and the ongoing cost too.
Yeah, yeah. So, definitely something we need to look at an overall picture without holding you up,
Yes.
like you said.
I think that the takeaway for me is just going back again to, and we have had changing chiefs, which is, everyone has different things they have to do, so they move on. But when we do meet with fire, checking in on that overall needs assessment type approach that Chief Scoos was interested, as was Chief Graham. Yeah, it was Graham before, sorry. And then kind of getting that, I know that they're definitely not looking at moving up, but moving out. And the longer term review. So I think it lands more with fire. But I do appreciate that you guys are working on this diligently too, because everyone's expanding based on needs. So thank you for that. And I think if there's anything we can do to support, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you.
Of course, thank you.
Right. So budget remains the same as in the past for our service. So, but it's good to get the update on your project.
Oh, the one thing I did want to mention with the 50 callouts to date, not a single one fire related. So after last year, we had 13, I think, were fire calls. Not all here, they were surrounding area, a lot of mutual aid as well. So if we were to have a busy fire year on top of our expanding call out, it's So yeah, it's kind of crazy how it goes. Not a single one.
And are they're primarily for SAR then, or outside of the boundaries, right? There's not a lot that happens that
It was just
requires SAR calls in the village proper.
It was for, in the village, the rail or the river trail would probably be our highest, mountain bike trails. Yeah. Mountain bikers, they're the top.
Right.
Mountain bikers and then snowmobilers are the most two injured.
And I guess road.
Road rest.
Yeah. And so those are predominantly in the summer months when we have more tourist traffic and people unfamiliar with our roads and.
Half, I guess.
Half and half.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of, people exceeding their limits, right? Go a lot of speed.
Right.
Jazz Fest week with 2 within an hour.
Yeah. Yeah. And we do have them on our map. I mean, you can see the hot spots, the Mirror Lake, of course, but then, heading up. The curves heading up towards New Denver and Schroeder's always about me too. Yeah. So it's kind of neat to see them over the years. You can plot them where they are. And this is a bad curve or that's a bad stretch.
Right.
I got more follow-up.
Go ahead.
On the wildfire, like on the fire ones, those are evacuation alerts.
Yeah.
Putting out, and I believe just budget wise, correct me if I'm wrong, you get reimbursed for those.
Yes.
Full expense, or is there cost? I guess there's operational, just in terms of team training and stuff. That would be.
So if it's a direct in-hour search area, we get $500 per 24-hour response, and then we get $25 for every member that shows up, and $15 for every member for a lunch period every 4 hours.
Okay. And then the other follow-up is just regarding this, the Joseph Life, the road rescue. I believe I included you on all the emails that were going to Ministry of Transportation regarding Mirror Lake.
Yes.
So they did, and I want to acknowledge Mark Jennings Bates, who was included in those emails and really advocated for specific things. And so they've done most of the ones they said they would do in Mirror Lake, Modi, that is, or Mont. The chevrons, the signs, and they did also provide response on why they wouldn't do speed bumps and or lower the speed limit. So that was, positive to some degree. We did also advocate really that there's more RCMP presence because that's excessive speed. I followed people who were going 60 the whole way from Nelson and then went 70 through Mirror Lake. Like,
It's mind-boggling.
it is mind-boggling. RCMP presence or increase of that, I think, is a much bigger conversation that I know Village of Castle has been advocating for years to see, but that's kind of those. And the speed reader sign, which has not been installed at this time, they did put one in early in the summer, but it was so tiny, I don't think anyone was seeing it. I do believe that's on their list. That would be a permanent one in Mirror Lake. And I believe the strike is just what's holding that up right now, is my guess. So just some updates on those. But when you have the hot spots, if you can, and please do include us for advocacy, that's the kind of stuff where I would definitely take that to Ministry of Transportation saying, really critical data for you. This is so helpful. Could you do something? Could you put in some more warning signs or, I would assume the RCMP know where to sit if those are hot spots, but if not, that's
what we assume. We kind of leave that sort of stuff to the RCMP side of things.
Okay.
For sure. We try and stay as neutral.
And because we are volunteers, we already spend a lot of time.
yes.
So we're not being paid for it. Like that's why we probably not gonna run after every issue because
Well, feel free to send those
Mhm.
my way for those areas outside of the village, and I'm happy to advocate. It's not always
Program that people-
productive, but I will.
Yeah, Schroeder's the only one I can think of.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks.
Right, so we'll move on to your next presentation, which is Council Linear via Chamber of Commerce.
Chamber of Commerce. Okay. So the chamber has a much smaller budget. I guess the funding that we receive from the village goes to May Days and to Light Up, mostly to May Days, if I'm being honest. It's definitely the more expensive, larger production. We're lucky in the past few years to get enough grants to cover the majority of Light Up on its own. And then for May Days is our big one, of course, that comes through. What did I have? But also we're putting on more networking events. We've got one coming up next month. We've been stepping in to fill the gap of Selkirk College with providing our first aid courses. We just had one this weekend. So those have been pretty popular. We hosted the Provincial All Candidates Forum, so that was extremely well attended. That was nice to see. And then the Great Gift Giveaway is coming up, so really trying to drive people to shop in our downtown and get there. The other big success we've had is with our Chamber Cash program. So in 2024, we had $7,920 in Chamber Cash purchased. So that money will stay in our community and be spread around all over the place again, which is great for the community. Oh yeah, we were a big sponsor of Winter in the Forest this year. We enjoy that. So that was great. We were the Human Dog Sled sponsor. And Jana made a really great trophy, so that was fun. We hosted we helped host the emergency preparedness workshop for businesses. So encouraging businesses. We worked with Kootenay Rockies Tourism on that one. Corinne put on the presentation. So, and then we added an emergency preparedness page to our website. So we're encouraging everyone to get prepared in that way. Anything specific you'd like me to speak to, or do you have any questions?
Just want to get, and it's actually just timely. I was chatting with a friend who works at White Grizzly this morning, and they are working on their emergency plan. And of course, they're going to network with Hamel Creek and Florida Valley Forest Products and whatnot. But I'm curious, for chamber members, I don't know that they're a member. I know you do go that north, don't you?
Yep.
Okay. When you reference the emergency stuff, is there resources for members on that, or is it just an FYI on how to do them?
It's just sourcing the information, and then I'm around to help for members as well.
For members, yeah.
Assistance with that. But yeah, I usually direct them to Kootenay's Rockies Tourism, who has a really good business planning. They have a step-by-step guide, and that's what the workshop went through. So I can pass on those pamphlets if they're not interested in communicating directly or things like that. Yeah.
It's I think an increasing need. Well, it's a need for most insurances. I know that that's who's setting the templates for most of these folks, but it's a good connection for people to be like, hey, the chamber.
Yeah.
It's a bit of an advantage to have those type of resources when you have low capacity. So we're grateful for that. I guess my only other question was remind me, did we use the EDC money? We split it between
Yes,
Chamber.
it should be, it's in here and links, yes.
and links.
Yeah.
And so is that where we, instead of it just being Village of Caslow funding, it was now joint funding?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yes, this is our first year on this new system for the chamber. Yeah, to be a part of this specific funding stream. Yeah.
Okay, great.
And that's in the grants line.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Those are all my questions.
And I wonder if just for our purposes, we should
Have a separate line.
requisition broken out because it's a separate.
Right, 7,500.
Yeah,
I can do that.
'cause otherwise we don't know if you're asking for an increase.
Gotcha.
If for whatever reason. Cause I know the village had another portion that we had provided at one point, but I don't know whether that was required anymore. It was additional insurance, for events, right? Cause that,
Yeah, no, because we're paying for that separately now, so.
okay, so you found something that was working.
The one you had recommended, they didn't do parades, so I had to find it different. They would do the craft fair and the music in the
Right.
park, but they wouldn't do the parades. We went with a provider that could cover both.
Oh, okay. Any other questions on the chamber?
I think just reminding me that I'm now catching up to the fact that they would be asking likely we would put an EDC service, but is the request the same amount for this year?
Yes,
Okay.
7,500.
That's what we put in the budget in. For last year.
For last year, yeah.
Yeah.
That's it from me.
Actually, do you want, resolutions, asking that those two amounts for the 30,000 for Castle Search and Rescue and the 7,500 for the chamber be put in the draft budget?
Yeah, the chair, you could have a direction to staff to put those in the budget, and I'm not sure if you want to wait until your next presentation and then do all three. if
Oh,
you're
okay.
Considering
Yep.
continuing with links as well, but you could do
Yep.
all three as one motion.
Okay. All right. Well, I think there's nothing else from your end. We will move on to the next presentation.
Perfect.
All right. Well, thank you both for coming. You can choose to stay if you wish, or if you want to take this opportunity to speak out. You can.
Good to see you. Bye. Thanks, Alana. Thanks, guys.
I'm gonna stick around, but I gotta be announcing.
How many hats do you wear now?
5.
Yeah.
I'll see you tomorrow night.
Yeah, I betcha.
Bye.
Bye.
Right. That means we're to Links and Chelsea.
Hello, thanks for having me. I'm not sure if I really grasped the request for the budget. So I provided a report for the funds for the grant that we got, and I'm realizing after Alana presented, I could have sent in the 5-year budget. So in future, if that's what you want, then that's what I'll do. I just being the first time, I wasn't sure. So I hope that if you need more information, just ask. But last year we got the grant from you guys gratefully and delivered 4 market fests throughout the Lardo Valley. So the first one was in May for our emergency preparedness fair, and then we collaborated with the Historical Society for their 25th year, 50th year, big anniversary party at the museum this year, and then did a community garage sale market fest theme in Argenta, and then did a Friday evening market fest. And so we had a good turnout for vendors and patrons, especially at the last 2. The first 2 were a little bit slower. And so we're just considering on how to make some changes to increase the foot traffic and guests and stuff like that. I think we'll put a less emphasis on the emergency preparedness fair and try and diversify how we're getting that information out to the public, because it's not attracting. So I think we'll move it more onto like social media and do prize events and things like that for and quizzes and stuff like that for emergency preparedness awareness with the public, and focus more on our first theme we were thinking about. Let me look at my my thing. Yeah, to do the community-wide garage sale in May, like kind of a spring cleaning thing, and then a plant sale market in June, and then evening markets in July and August on Friday evenings, and kind of like a dinner market. And so the benefit of this is just being that we don't have another market opportunity up the lake now that the Sunday market's closed, and a once monthly kind of festival market style seems to be more the pace of what people are coming out for and what vendors are available. One thing that we are looking at is doing like a pilot shared vendor table to come to the Caslow market for vendors who don't have the ability to do a table every week or the capacity, but maybe can do a rotation. So that's not a big expense of the grant. That would just be a little bit of coordination support that we'd offer if people wanted to try that out. But otherwise, we'd like to continue on with the Market Fest. We got a lot of good feedback, that so great that this is happening. Nothing else is really happening. And so that's great. I did notice the LBCC in Meadow Creek are doing a winter market. So that's nice. That's not overlapping. So we got the summer covered. And yeah, I think that kind of covers it. We did a vendor survey. Everyone was happy with the turnout and the time. And although we have themes, we are open to any vendors that are interested in coming. It's no one's excluded. It's just kind of a little bit of marketing themes and stuff like that. So we incorporated having the vendors there. And then we did prizes from stores and services like acupuncture or different yoga, the yoga studio here in Argenta, did a punch card and stuff like that. So helping businesses that, aren't suited to a market environment. And then we also did the coupons to patrons to help them spread the wealth around a little bit and keep the money flowing to the vendors. So that was a really big positive. One challenge was finding food vendors for that always seems to be a big challenge to find a caterer willing to do the dinner. I'm not really sure why, because I think it's lucrative, but it's also a big job. So we want to this year try and just secure one person to do all markets. And then I think we're going to try and reduce the coordination load by keeping it all in one location, keeping it all in Argenta, because they have all the tables and chairs and a covered area and covered kitchen area, outdoor space. So that's just a lot less moving of equipment around the valley, which and those seem to be the best attended of the events. So I think that kind of covers what I wanted to present. Do you guys have any questions?
Do you have any questions?
Yeah, thanks, Chelsea. I do want to note, and I think we know this, but I really appreciate the BC Farmers Market model itself is quite limiting in terms of who can be a vendor. And the more remote we are, we know we need to be more amenable to those who might be like Natalie, who might bring stuff in, or others that are reselling. Or I just think it's a really good opportunity to be outside the box and make it more community based. So I really appreciate the markets. I think they're great. Love the plant sale. That's a great one. There's always lots of people on Facebook moving their plants around. I think that would just be it. The budget you're requesting is the same as last year, I believe, 6,800. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's great work.
Okay, thank you.
I just wondered how come you reduced the equipment and the music fees instead when you expanded it all? Is there a reduced number of markets?
No, there'll be the 4 markets, but we wanted to emphasize number one, there's not that many musicians up the lake. So we were finding that we could adjust the budget to help with the food costs and things like that, and take a little bit, and then have the live music on the evening markets in the summer. And then we'll just, you know, do like a playlist or something and have some music, like have the PA and music for the garage sale and stuff like that, because that's going to be a lot more of like a mobile sort of like people driving around. Because along with having locations, we want to collaborate with for the garage sale with the Meadow Creek Hall, and then do a location in Argenta and in Meadow Creek. And then anyone who wants to set up at their house, like have a map and then really like market it and like hopefully attract people up the lake for this community garage sale day. We'll see how it goes. So it just not as suited for the music for those ones. Yeah.
Also on spot. I've never get a chance because I'm always working.
Yeah, we'd love to see you.
Another question?
Well, just a thought, Chelsea, when you do the community garage sale, you know how with the cultural tour, they also add in the artists, and there's usually quite a few up the lake, and you might want to add those into the map if they want to participate as well.
Yeah, totally. That's a great idea. Yeah, or the, you know, like Bob Canterbury's leather shop or something like that. We could get creative with that, or maybe incorporate that for all the market fests. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you'll see there's a little bit more in coordination for that sort of stuff, and for like the pilot table in for the Caslo market.
Right.
And so yeah, a little bit of shifting around in the budget that took away from those two, the music, because that's a pretty spendy thing to have the live music at all four. So we just thought we'd emphasize that in the two. Yeah.
Right. And regarding the presentation of your budget, I think that works because it's just in a different format than the ones you just saw, but it's got all the information there as far as I'm concerned. I don't think we need you to do anything else. It's got everything in your document. So
Okay, great.
I
Okay,
think-
that's great. If you're happy to just see the budget for the Market Fest.
So that's the difference, is that like,
okay,
this is not a Links budget, this is just the Market Fest budget, and Links has strategic planning on Thursday,
Right.
and then our budget will come out of that, so that's just the difference.
Okay. But this is what we're funding is the Market Fest, and that's why it's
Yeah. So I think in terms of how we approach all the other ones, we generally have like an organizational budget, and, you know, depending on how we move forward, we might want to see the bigger budget. But at this time, it goes against our timing on getting budgets early because they're still working there. So I'm good with it, but in the future, we might want to see a broader budget.
right.
But I don't need it.
Yeah. Stuart, from staff's perspective, does this meet the needs?
Yeah, through the chair, in terms of what we have no guidelines or process for in advance material. So it's really up to the directors in terms of what you wish to see. And if this is good enough, and you say perhaps after the strategic planning, you get the full budget at least for receipt on an agenda.
Right.
Maybe not have another delegation to not take up Chelsea's time, but if you can just receive it, then that's probably sufficient. But yeah, it just depends on what you feel comfortable with before putting the grant in the budget.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks very much, Chelsea.
Yeah, and I realized like I do have the 5-year budget that we provided on receipt of the grant in 2020 this year in 2025, and so I can send that right along. It's just not like our annual budget for next year. So I think that's what SAR submitted, was their 5-year budget. Does that make sense?
I think that is part of the criteria on the grant, so we just get it administratively, it gets filed with them, but
Right.
I don't know that we need to receive it here. I'll leave that up to, I'm good with it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
See you in a few hours.
Yes. Are you driving or are you going to remote in?
No, I'll come up. I'm up the lake 3 times this week.
Amazing. Yeah, twice for us.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Right. So then a direction to staff to include $30,000 for Castle Search and Rescue, $7,500 for Castle and Area Chamber of Commerce, and $6,800 for Laurel Valley Links in the draft budget.
I'll second that with a question.
Christine's nodding. I'm just making sure she's got that.
I
I don't.
My question is just that, I think, Paystar is its own budget. I don't know if we need to include in the motion that Chamber and Links would be under the economic development service.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, through the chair, you could say just service 109 for that one,
Okay.
just to be clear.
Okay.
Clear. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right, so all those in favor? Carried. Right, and then staff reports. We move on to the Donald Creek contract update.
So you can stay on if you want, Chelsea, or if you probably got things to do, you can feel free to log off.
Okay, I am gonna log off. I've got some other stuff going on today, but thanks for having me. Bye for now.
Thank you. So that's Eileen for the McDonald Creek?
Yes, yeah. So through the chair, we originally had this on the last Water Services Committee meeting. And rather than inviting Director Hewitt to the meeting when she might not be able to attend, we just thought it better to bump it here for information. And then it would go on Water Services in December, I believe, which we could send you an invitation for if you were interested in attending that. And then subject to the approval of the Water Services Committee, it would go to board. But any questions on the agreement itself, I'd defer to Eileen because my expertise in this area is not hers.
Welcome, Eileen.
Thank you. Nice to see everyone.
So, wow, you two have obviously had time to discuss it at Water Services.
No, we
No,
haven't
no.
discussed it at
No,
all.
through the chair, I took it off the agenda because I didn't.
Yeah.
think it
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
just because it was just serving another meeting, I thought that it might get referred here anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
So no, there has been no discussion on this
Okay.
agreement at this point with the elected
Alright.
officials.
Okay. So we'll let you take it from here then, Eileen.
And I think Eileen, if I could, maybe it's just best to point out anything that's changed since the previous agreement. I think that was really the focus of what the concerns were from Directors Hewitt and Watson on what this agreement looked like coming forward.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair, I'll just give you maybe a quick overview if that's okay, and then you can ask any questions you might have. So this agreement dates back to about 2007. And basically at that time, the McDonald Creek and the Castle water systems were connected together after a landslide took out some infrastructure for the former McDonald Creek system. And so as a part of that, there was an upgrade required to the water treatment plant to increase capacity. And so there was, at that time, there was a payment schedule included in the agreement to pay for some upgrades to the water treatment plant. Since then, that's all been finished up, paid off. And so this agreement, we thought about doing an amendment to the agreement, but because that payment schedule was still in there and was really no longer relevant, we thought this would be a good opportunity to redraft the agreement and just provide an opportunity to change things if there was an appetite to do so, or to keep it the same, but just have it in our new template and up to date and not reflecting this payment schedule, which has been all wrapped up. So at this point in time, if you have a look at the agreement, Schedule A includes the description of services, largely the same as before. Schedule B contains the revenue and capital costs, again, largely the same as before. Not a lot of changes there, just we cleaned up a few things in terms of making sure that everything in the agreement matched what was in the definitions and those sorts of housekeeping bits and pieces, but the real sort of meat and potatoes of the agreement hasn't changed much. So we wanted to send this back over to the Village of Caslow, see if it is still working for you. And if not, then we can talk about that. But I think that's about everything in a nutshell.
Right, did you have any questions?
I have about 7 questions. Want me to go ahead?
Yes.
Thanks, Eileen. So I've never seen the old agreement, so I think you basically indicated that there are no changes relatively to that. The one note I make is the original bylaw map and what's in this agreement is different. So I imagine the McDonald Creek bylaw needs to be updated with the new map.
Through the chair, the map that's in this agreement is accurate. So you're right. Director Watson, there have been some changes since the original service area was established. So there's been a couple of properties that have been brought in. And that map that you see in this draft agreement is up to date.
And sorry, the question is just maybe through to Stuart, we're going to have to update the McDonald Creek bylaw so that the mapping is accurate. Currently, the bylaw mapping is not accurate.
The service established
Yes.
bylaw.
Yeah, so through the chair, we just have to check if there's an amendment to this bylaw that maybe those parcels were added.
Okay.
And that's where the map would be. It wouldn't be on the original establishment bylaw, which is what's included in the agreement. But if there was any amendments to this bylaw 1651 that added properties, then the new map would be in that bylaw. So it's just a matter of seeing if there's amendments, which there should have been if we added properties.
Okay.
I don't even think we have the ability to tax them a parcel tax or
If you haven't amended the bylaw.
if we haven't amended the bylaw.
Okay.
Yeah.
So on that, in 16 in the service agreement, it says 93 equivalent units, but sorry, it says it's written 92 and then 93 is in brackets. So my question on that is just that must be just a typo in the agreement, but how many connections are current and is that the same and are they all used or is there connections available?
Through the chair, that's a good observation. Recently, my colleague Natalie did an audit of the connection rights and in the agreement they're called equivalent units. We've been using the term connection rights between staff. I think that's just what people got used to using over the years. There's 93 is the current count and 4 free floating. So there's 4 connection rights that at this point in time are not being used.
Thank you. Also in that same section, there's there's aspects about a development application. I'm curious what a development application is. There's no zoning. So the only applications we would get would either be a development permit and or a building permit. So what's a development application?
Through the chair, that's a term that we've used in water services whenever somebody is proposing any kind of development, whether that's subdivision, whether that's a building, and so they would present to us a development application so that we can then look and see if there's capacity within the system to service what they're proposing and also to have a look at the infrastructure and see what would be required for infrastructure upgrades. And then that way we can provide the applicant with a cost estimate.
Okay, that's helpful. So essentially a subdivision application, which I think is one of the only things you'd see in that area. That was what that helps me understand that. On the Schedule B for communication and consultation, what I was curious about is when I understand that the kind of joint effort we have on managing and delivering the service. So obviously if Casville has capital upgrades or changes to that budget, what's currently in the agreement is we're notified with a 3-month timeline. My concern with that first is that in the agreement, there's nothing about public engagement from a budgetary perspective, which I wouldn't necessarily think that that's Casville's responsibility for Allen subdivision if it's capital requests, but it doesn't give us enough time to do that. And second to that, and this is more to the villages, because we do our budgets the way we do, 3 months, let's say it's July, is really outside of the budgeting process. And then that requires financial plan amendments and all those details. So I'm curious if in the agreement, the consultation on capital upgrades could be more conducive to the actual budgeting process that we are required to do. So that if you're So we don't have a major capital upgrade happening mid budget, and we don't have the reserves, or we're unaware of it. Now we have to go to borrowing and all those details. So that's I'm kind of looking for more information and more things in the agreement around the timing on that and how we engage the public on that, so that it's, you know, let's say you're going to do a major upgrade. I think we've just been using community works and our reserves, but if there's one that's going to affect the actual taxation, because we did parcel tax, that it's within the budget conversation as much as possible, and that 3 months might be too short depending on the implications to the service. I don't know who takes that one, but
Yeah, it's really unfortunate that CAO Baker is away on a course this week that he had to take. There was no way I was going to compel him to stay here for a 2-hour meeting when he had to take his planning approving officer's courses. So just to get his feedback on something like that, because from my way of thinking, we don't want to, if we got something that's identified, we don't want to hold it up because it doesn't work, and because the amount that Area D puts into it is fairly minimal, really, in essence, because for the, you know, close to $1 million project that's currently underway for the UV treatment, I think the contribution is less than $50,000. So it's more consequential for us to meet our that this is my off the top of my head thinking, to hold the village up for something like that when the amount that's being contributed by Area D is so minimal, and that if it impacts our ability to deliver on a capital upgrade that is probably necessary, we don't look to spend money just to spend money, because we've got a lot of other things to look after. So that would be my concern with trying to move things around. And none of these big projects happen within 3 months anyhow, right? And I think that staff has been good about communicating early on. So you probably get more than a year anyhow, would be my guess, because from inception, if we're thinking of doing something, we have to get a consultant to draw up plans, and that would trigger that, we're looking at doing something.
so that's really where I'm wanting to be triggered, is that right now the agreement says you give us 3 months notice, which we've had a lot more than that, and it's been great. My concern is that something goes through and we don't have it in the budget. So then how are we provide, no matter what the number is, if it's not included in the budget, or we haven't had the time to do the financial planning that we're all required to do to be able to support that, then we're left in the lurch of basically I'm trying to find grants to provide it if it's not in the service. So that's the timing I'm trying to make sure is included in the agreement, so that it's not, you're not going to do any major capital upgrades within 3 months. We know that. But I want the agreement to acknowledge that as soon as there's information, which you've done with the UV, you gave us lots of heads up, and whether, I can't remember if it's reserves we're using or if it's a grant, but you've given me lots of head up. I just want that in the agreement that says as soon as we're triggered to make sure that it's a part of our financial planning. And then if should it come up, we don't have a 3 month timeline to find something we might not have in the service because we didn't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Sheriff, if you want it in the agreement, then it can be put in the agreement. I think that it wouldn't be outside of anything else we do on a budgeting basis. We deal with mid-year projects through short-term borrowing, through, there's different ways to deal with things in which I imagine would be an emergency repair that would come up that might cause an issue with a timeline like this. Anything planned, if you don't know about it by budget March, it's probably not happening that year.
Right.
If it's a planned capital project. So you're really looking at emergencies.
So perhaps the language is that the planned capital upgrades are within the budget timeframe, and then those emergency ones have a minimum of 3 months in terms of turnaround, so that we're addressing both aspects.
It depends what the emergency is, right? If it's an emergency and we're we can't provide water, then 3 months might be unreasonable.
Well, 3 months is what you currently have.
Right, I know.
If we're borrowing,
Right, so in that case, then the village would probably have to go on their own to be able to provide the service, because we need to provide it to our residents as well. So and perhaps that's it. You just say, too bad, so sad. You haven't given us 3 months, so you're on your own.
I would never do that to spite you. What I'm acknowledging is the process around how we do these things. And the missing piece for me is that the long-term planning is a lot more than 3 months notice. And I just want that acknowledged in there. 3 months is currently what's in there.
Yeah.
And yes, if it's an emergency and we currently, I think when I review the service, I review the service specifically from a capital perspective, but I don't know your capital needs. So that's where I'm trying to make the connection. So currently we have a pretty good reserve, and so, those emergency needs, likely we're going to be fine, but that's right now. And so this agreement is in perpetuity until we change it. So I'm just acknowledging the two different ways village might be coming to RD for capital supports. Long-term planning needs to be within the budget process. And then we can make sure our reserves are matching whatever your asset management plan is. That's a whole other piece that I would love to see our reserves actually matching what you're doing for reserves based on your asset management. And we don't currently have that. So that would be a good piece to know so that we have those reserves. And then of course, if emergencies occur.
Yeah.
So I think that's the only addition I'm looking to make at this time. Yeah, and then the only other one was, and I think this goes through the budget process, so I don't know that it needs to be any agreement, but similar to any of our water systems we have. And I'm not expecting you guys to have this, but we have advisory committees that the budgets go through. So there's this kind of public trigger point around what we're doing. I don't think you need that in the agreement, but it would be something that if there's a long term and we're increasing reserves, generally the public is involved in that process to some degree. And so I would that's helpful for me to know in the forefront so I can make sure they know, hey, your parcel tax are going up 20%. This is fine.
So the way I understand it, your reserves are essentially for your pipes in the ground. They're not for our water treatment plant. Because one of the notes that I had was to make it so that it's not on one-off, that there is a specific capital reserve for work that has to be done at the treatment plant because it benefits everyone. And your current reserves are for not repairs, but for capital upgrades for the pipes in the ground in the McDonald Creek area. So it doesn't cover any capital, and that's why for the treatment plant, and that's why they're always one-offs that occur. I don't know whether.
Well, that's where I was saying to know your asset management plan and what your contributions are for the rest of the system would be really helpful for us to know what we should be putting into reserve that is not limited to the infrastructure we own, but also includes our obligations to the other system. That's where that long-term planning comes in, that helps us know what we're doing in reserves is not just the infrastructure we're responsible for, but the one that by this agreement we're also contributing to. So that's where I think it would be really helpful. And I don't know how we would do this, Eileen, in terms of the agreement where your asset management plan annual, suggested contributions to reserve are somehow prorated into what we do for our reserves. And then any of those emergencies are covered. And then going back to the public engagement piece, that's where I would be like, hey, this is how we're planning, because that'll increase your parcel tax. So that's why I'm trying to include that are currently, yes, our reserve is limited to the infrastructure we own and are responsible for, but we are not in this agreement limited to that responsibility. So how do we know that asset management percentage annually we should be putting aside?
From our perspective, I don't think we separate. We don't separate plant from our pipes in the ground, right? So you're not going to match our entire reserve contribution because or a parcel tax for water because it is for the whole system within the village, which it includes the plant. So, then you're wanting to direct our staff to
No.
keep a separate. Well, that's the only way we could do it.
This is where I mentioned the prorated aspect is, of course, you have an asset management plan, similar to what we did with the services. When we're doing a contribution, we're looking at our portion of that. So we would have to do that through, what I'm trying to do is address the fact that we don't have a reserve that includes the full perspective of what we need to be considering long-term. There's more than that. So the only way we're going to get an idea of what that is to have your asset management plan. And then we would have to parcel out the pieces that we are responsible for, which isn't the whole system. I'm not directing your staff. I'm trying to include the long-term planning fulsome to what this agreement says we're responsible for. So that's a prorated conversation. That's okay, so here's what we are responsible for based on this agreement. And this is what the annual contribution should be based on that, which would be our job, not yours.
Like I said, ours it's rolled up and we'd have to separate it, like do that proration. Right now, we don't do that. We can, because, we know that municipalities work differently. As long as it's within water, it doesn't matter whether it's been for the pipes, the reserve was set up for pipes in the ground or the plant. We can move it back and forth. It's fluid. So we don't have it specified.
That would be our job. Looking at your asset management plan, what is it that we need to be including in our reserve?
So I prefer to have one of our staff who's more knowledgeable, because I had no idea, obviously what you were going to bring forward as potentials. And, the way it looks right now, because there's questions, we're not going to have this done by the time we're supposed to have it done, whether we just do a 1-year agreement and work on more details.
Can I just
through the chair, does that need to be in the agreement? Like, that's a concern that you've got for your property owners, that the asset management plan for the RD has enough money in it to cover Caslow infrastructure should something happen. That's a concern. That's not a concern for them. Like, the village, putting it bluntly, doesn't care where the money comes from as long as it doesn't come from the village when the emergency plan comes up. And like Chair Hewitt said, they're going to proceed to ensure that their customers have water regardless. So I don't think it needs to be in the agreement. That being said, there could be some sort of user ratio calculation that the RD comes up with to say, here's the asset management plan for our infrastructure, and then here's kind of the asset management portion that it's probably never going to be accurate unless the village can specifically break out, right? Like, draw the line and say everything beyond here is costing us 20% of our contribution. Everything over here on our side is 80. So we take that 20. But it's never going to be 100% accurate. I think we're going to have to sit down with staff and say, okay, based on what we've seen in the past in terms of what the service has needed to provide to village infrastructure, what would we feel comfortable with on an ongoing basis? But that's a discussion that you could have with Eileen and some of the water team and even our asset management coordinator to say, how much do you feel comfortable putting away on an annual basis if we can't get that detail from the village? But I'm not sure it needs to be in the agreement, because it's a concern that you've got around the financial viability of for Area D.
So yeah, I just want to paraphrase. What I'm actually looking here is to not be out of money when it's needed. That's what I'm trying to do here, is to be fulsome to what we consider when we're managing infrastructure. So the one thing I do want in the agreement is the note on the difference between a 3-month and the 5-year long-term planning, so we can plan for that. That's the main thing I do want in the agreement. Specifics on that are that we do need to figure out, when I'm looking at the budget, I've never even seen the agreement for this. So when we talked about reserves, I'm like, okay, but I know it's more than that. So I'm trying to not be hypothetical. I'm trying to be, and I would never expect 100%. We don't get 100% even in our own water systems, but I'm trying to consider that we are not responsible for just the pipes in the ground in Allen subdivision. We are making a commitment through this agreement. We've done it loosely before. Now it's an agreement that we are also responsible for the treatment plant based on the number of users to the full system. That's what I'm trying to make sure is a part of the planning process, so that if our reserves are only considering the infrastructure on the ground in Allen subdivision, that's short-sighted. I'm trying not to be short-sighted. So that's where I'm going with this. I don't know that it needs to be in the agreement, but I want it somewhere where it's not just me sitting here saying, I don't want to not think about the future in terms of full consideration. So where that lands, I don't know. What needs to be provided, I don't know. But it's really to support being a participant in the system. It's not to change and require your staff or director staff to do anything. It's trying to be responsible that we're a participant in this. And right now, this agreement identifies things that I don't have a way of quantifying. So I mean, how would we do that?
Through the chair, great question, Director Watson. We've talked about this a lot internally, and I mean, honestly, I think the person who has the best understanding of what the options are is Uli Wolf. But there's definitely different ways of doing it. We've looked at things like looking at, like Stuart said, a user ratio calculation. So how many connections are in McDonald Creek? How many connections are in the village of Caslow, and using that as the ratio for contributions to reserves. Something that we do in other water systems is that rather than collecting a parcel tax, we collect what's called an annual contribution to reserves. It's just maybe a little bit more clearly defined. Because what we don't know is, and we've asked this question, but what we really don't know is with the village of Caslow, if the user fees being collected, if any of that money is going towards reserve. So we're a little bit unclear there ourselves. So I think that's really the piece that we need to look at all the options and figure out which one is the best one. Currently, in Schedule B, Section 4, that's what we've got, and that's what was in the previous, exactly what was in the previous agreement, or the current agreement.
So if I can ask that when we review the McDonald Creek water system, that there's a flag for Uli around this whole conversation, and that he has some kind of pre-work done on how to address that when I look at reviewing that water system. And if that's at the Water Services Committee, now that we have that, that's fine. And then I had one other question. So my other question, which is not related to the agreement, is the where. Where is the ownership and details on the where we were looking at? We still currently own the McDonald Creek where, but it's not. Where did that land?
Through the chair, could you repeat the question, please, Director Watson? I don't quite understand.
So the old water system has a weir on it, WEIR, and
the weir.
It's still under, weir, sorry,
Weir.
okay, thank you. It's still under the RDCK, but it's not in use. And so there was work being done to work with the village of Caslow. They were interested in it as like a firefighting kind of piece of infrastructure. I'm not sure. So I'm just curious where that conversation's at. I think it's been about 2 years, maybe 3 years since we were looking into that.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, thank you for that clarification. The weir, I don't know a lot about the weir. All I know about it is that it's on private land. And my understanding through our former staff, Jason McDermott, was that the landowner was not granting us access to do anything with it. He considered it his weir, and it just sort of stopped there. That's my understanding. I can find out more, but we haven't been looking at that recently at all.
I think for just Stuart's information, as far as I know, we do own the liability on that. And if we're not able to access it, assess it, or know what to do with it, that's a concern on my part.
Yeah, and through the chair, there might be more information. That's not Eileen's file. Jason was working on it, so it'd be Chris or Uli that would have picked that up after Jason retired.
Okay,
Yeah.
And so how do I follow up on that?
Eileen, can you flag that to bring up with Uli next time you chat with him?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, I had some concerns with and I didn't see them addressed. There had been a couple of instances where there were illegal connections facilitated by residents in the McDonald Creek system, and they just ran lines from their property to a neighboring property to facilitate a hookup without going through the proper channels, which causes concern for the village with cross contamination. And but I'd like to see something in there that there would be penalties for illegal connections for both the one facilitating and the one who is receiving the illegal connection. Because there's a number of connections that we've agreed to, and however, I know how that was conducted, and it maybe wasn't ideal, but it was done to get this done quickly from my perspective. So that's one of the things. And I think there should be something in there, some formalized process for expanding the number of units, because with the new housing push, and because the village has water, and that's the only way that Area D could expand in that area beyond the current number of connections. And again, it's unfortunate that CAO Baker can't be here, but and we haven't discussed this as council. It's coming to our strategic private planning session to have a full discussion on it from our perspective, from all of council. So what the process would be, because we have to make sure that we first and foremost look after, our residents, to ensure that there is water for them should subdivision happen. And how could we do that?
So through the chair, it may be better if this gets referred back to village staff for input. We've got 6 weeks before this goes on the water services agenda, which I don't think is too much of a squeeze unless you tell me otherwise. But I think the timelines work. If you've got concerns about how specific issues would be handled, particularly around the unlawful connections, perhaps it's better to push this back to staff so that CAO Baker can have some input, provide that to Eileen, and we can get amendments made before it goes on to the water services agenda. And before that happens, we get confirmation from both yourself and council or Director Watson that the agreement's good to go onto that agenda, because the last thing I want is for on that agenda for you to both have significant comments that are sitting there and being debated in front of the other 11 participants of that committee. So that might be the way to go at this point if you've got the concerns that you're laying out. Yeah.
I just want to clarify, because I thought both of those were addressed, and I just want to clarify if I'm understanding it correctly, is that we have a fee and charges bylaw that would apply to this area. So I want to first check in on the illegal connections. Would we not be able to, we're legally able to fine those people, are we not, Eileen? And
through the chair, my understanding is that at this point in time, all the penalties are being collected through the village of Castle. We don't do any billing or anything for this system. Everything is done through the village of Caslo through their bylaw.
so supplemental to that though, but I did note that this agreement connects to the RDCK fees and charges. So if there's illegal connections which are addressed in our fees and charges, I think what Mayor Hewitt's looking for is those mechanisms that we as the system owner in that area is applying the same rules we would apply in our own systems, which is it's illegal to do that. So there should be punishment. That's a strong word, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So is that not a connection being made when we reference the RDCK fees and charges bylaw, or is that something that is missing?
Through the chair, our fees and charges bylaw references back to the Village of Caslow's bylaws for anything like that. So if you have a look at our fees and charges bylaw, the section for McDonald Creek basically says, see the Village of Caslow bylaw for fees and penalties.
And is that because they manage the connections?
Through the chair, that is because they manage all the billing, all the we don't manage any of the payment information. That's something that we should probably have a closer look at in the agreement. But as of right now, that's where we're at.
Okay, so it's a good flag because my understanding was that our own penalties that apply to water systems would apply in this case. I'm glad you asked that because I didn't know that. The other one was in terms of development. What I read in here is that if it exceeds the equivalent units, then there's a whole trigger for not service review, but something similar to those lines. So that I thought would then address the notion of like we have 93 units, equivalent units. So if it's within that, I guess there's 4 available currently. If it goes outside of that, then it triggers a full review. And I can't remember the terms that it used. New commercial service connections. So it's in here somewhere. Exceeding equivalent units.
So where the RSK receives the development application for a property within the service area.
Number 24 you're reading, eh?
Yeah, but there are not enough equivalent units. The development property, but there remain equivalent units in the service area. The RDCK may approve the proposed development, so you might be able to take one from somebody who isn't using it.
If the RDC has approved the allocation, the RDC will consult with the municipality, require the applicant to enter an agreement. I think there could definitely be stronger language around we've exceeded the 93 units or we're at that limit. So now what happens?
Or if there's requests to not just reallocate, which is provided in here, but it's to expand the service area.
That's what I mean is there's more language around what that process is.
There is at section 16. Is that where you are? RDCK municipality agreed the volume is 93 equivalent units unless Caslow water systems capacity is upgraded through written agreement between the parties as described in Schedule B, Section 4, or otherwise agreed to between the municipality and the RD. So without expansion or improvement in capacity, it can't increase beyond the 93.
So the system is limited. I mean, we know that, but we can't start approving them and exceed those limits.
Right. Without those conditions being met.
Yeah.
So there were provisions in there that building department automatically goes to see if there is.
Yeah.
Because I wondered if that was why people were illegally connecting, because they seek forgiveness rather than permission.
I can say that the A Avenue and then north to Becker Street, there's a lot of sales in that area where the information being provided, even if you go on realtor.ca, is quite misleading to the availability of water. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's where some of that occurred. There's quite a few lots in there that are for sale with a note on available water. And I know they're outside the service area. So doesn't like this agreement needs to capture all those pieces so that, people aren't doing that. And I would hope if there is illegal connections that one of us is enforcing that. And I was talking to someone up in that area who's looking at subdividing more, and I gave them a big heads up about there's limitations. There's very big limitations. Just as an FYI to them. I did think though, when we go to the map, I recalled Tires subdivided, which is
We didn't have enough water. We did not have enough connections, which caused us some consternation because he didn't speak for enough when the original assessment was done, and then he wanted to subdivide. And there were not sufficient connections
Okay, so
available to
he
him.
probably went off the other creek that's servicing the northern communities. Okay.
Don't know.
I know the subdivision went through, but I don't get the info on, so where did their water come from? I just knew about that years ago. Okay, thanks. I shouldn't use people's names. Sorry about that. Could have read the PID, but
So yeah, we're having November 2nd is our strat plan, and then probably won't spend a lot of time on it, but we will talk about it. Because council hasn't seen it. This agenda is the first time that I have seen the full package, and CAO Baker has seen it, and he'd given me some comparison commentary. And, we both saw that 92 versus 93, and then the concerns that I was raising. And I didn't bring the right notebook. I think I had others, but we're going to go that. But yes, it is on our agenda to make sure that we're through. But if you could provide dates to us from your end, so we can back it up and ensure that our meetings are happening in sufficient time to meet timelines for your, because I don't keep track of what water services is doing.
No,
but
but
I need to, but now I need to, because you need to have it go through that agenda.
well, I think ideally it comes back to this committee again in November before our next water services committee. Essentially, when we get to water services, we've worked it out, and it's like.
Through the chair, this is a great time to mention you do not have a November date for a meeting.
So we should have a November
The
should.
next meeting is December 1st. That's why you don't have a November meeting.
Oh, and I think, trying to remember why we did that.
Okay. Well, let's flag it. The ability for us to reconvene on that before water services.
And through the chair, Eileen, correct me if I'm wrong. It doesn't have to go to water services. It could go to board. It is an agreement that the board has to enter into water services while we put items on that agenda so that there can be fulsome debate. If the two affected directors have had a back and forth and are comfortable with the agreement, I think we could just put it on the board agenda if the timing didn't work out. Because December board is early, right? We do it a week early, so it's the 11th.
Sorry, but do we meet before water services anyways? We do. We meet the day before, 2 days before water services, December 1st. So we could still have it at this committee for shared services on December 1st. It could still go to water services as an FYI. It could be not an item they have to vote on, and then it goes to board.
Then it would go on the addenda because the agenda's been published already for water services.
Well,
You're talking about a Monday versus a Wednesday, the same week, right?
either way, I think the important meeting for it to be at next is this meeting, not like water services is, Mayor Hewitt's not generally there. We always invite people who would be, but I understand scheduling, definitely understand that. So I think December 1st, we want to see, all this kind of come back to us at this committee.
Yeah, and through the chair, a recommendation from this committee to the board is no different than a recommendation from water services to the board.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so
we had December 1st was our next meeting.
Yeah, according to my calendar.
What a true for calendars. I didn't know.
I just go to my calendar.
Oh, good. All right, yeah, we've only got one meeting in November for the village because of the. For the second, typically the second and fourth Tuesdays, but the second Tuesday is Remembrance Day, so we're doing installed. It's the same meetings. Limiting factor as well. But we discuss it at our strategic planning, and we're planning a committee of the whole meeting as well.
Would it help village staff to have any RD staff for some of these questions in your conversations?
I'll put it in the note for.
Put less pressure on you to bring back stuff that
Yeah,
staff can answer in the meeting if it's helpful.
following our community of the whole agenda.
Oh, Ray Sawyer wrote the letter to us for that.
Yeah.
McDonald Creek. I didn't see that.
I did the whole procedure bylaw, can't think of reader. So that our committee of the whole meeting is scheduled, is tentatively in our schedule for Tuesday, November the 4th. 6 p.m. All right, is there anything else on this item for today, or we?
I think the only direction in terms of agreement changes we have at this point is that kind of separating out financial planning long-term from the 3-month timeline. I think that's the only direction we've really given. And then the rest is more staff to staff in terms of capturing those notes. And I'll leave it to your staff to ensure if they want our staff.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm good.
Well, thanks, Eileen. Is there anything else from your perspective that you wanted to raise with us before you log off?
Through the chair, I think you really focused in on the really important parts of the agreement, where some more clarity and some more conversation with Village Caslo staff would be very beneficial. And I'll bring all this information back to Chris Gainham and Uli Wolf. We'll go from there.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eileen.
Okay, I'm gonna leave here, but have a great day, everyone.
Okay, you too.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right. So the next item is the arena accessibility and kitchen feasibility studies, and those were at the request of yourself, Director Watson.
Yeah, thank you. I mostly, I read about these in the paper, and as a shared contribution partner, I'm mostly, my primary question is just, is there going to be a request of a service that we need to know about in advance so that we can plan for it? Or is it, and I know in the report that the reserve funds available would likely be what would be accessed, which is great. That's no problem with that. I haven't had a chance to dive through the full report, so I don't have any questions on the report so much, just more that if there was going to be budget implications, that's my primary question.
Those are other items that we're going to be discussing at strategic planning, whether we go forward with anything. So that'll be another second. We'll be discussing that and how to proceed, and some concerns. We haven't, as a group, really gone through those
Okay.
two documents. Yeah, they're looked at from a certain perspective, and that it might not match with Robert being from the recreation realm and trail. He has different perspective than an architect might have,
Right.
on what's workable. And
Well, I don't think I would ever get into it's a village owned building property and whatnot. So that's however way you guys do that, it really is just a trigger on any increases to the budget that we have that, planned for as best as possible without a big hit to taxation, which I know would be your consideration as well. So I think anything that comes through the reserve that you need my consent on, if it's, I'm not going to be picky about that at all. I'm glad that reserve is there. So that was my primary request. And then I guess if there is budget implications, that would then come back to us. And then Joe would be looped in, or whoever community services, because that's the service it goes through.
Yeah, and I think we haven't included at this point because we were not even, it wasn't on our radar, I don't think, to even look to the service.
Yeah, no problem.
Just because we aren't at that point. Where these are more well, for the accessibility, that one is an area where I could see, because it's for the facility, but the kitchen, it was more to make it more of a viable option for emergencies. And there might be other types, other funding opportunities, and it might just be a letter of support from yourself for any work that occurs on the building, and if we were going to apply for grants.
Okay.
So that's, like I said, we didn't even think about going to the service because we tend to do these things. So
Well, there's always opportunity, especially in a shared service, to talk about grants and how we can be collaborative and supportive. So I, don't ever hesitate to bring those forward.
yeah. And so then we'll move on to Glacier and Lardo Parks.
Hi, Carrie.
Hello. How are you guys?
Good. How about yourself?
Oh, not bad. Not bad. All things considered, yeah. So yeah, I'll maybe let you start if that's okay through the chair, just to bring up your concerns, and then we can kind of chat about them as we kind of go through them.
All right, good.
So yes, thank you, Carrie, and thank you, Chair for putting this on. There are a couple things with both parks that I wanted to start kind of capturing at this table as we move into budget season. I'll start with Lardo being the one that I think might affect the budget more. I have had a request for over a year now, which was partially my fault that it's taken that long, for another review of the parking in the park. There's just some limitations that until I physically went there, I couldn't understand. And so I have asked staff if we can do a review. They have been in person before. They did a parking lot review, kind of like with the park and the community at the time. And this was a couple years ago. And so there's some issues that have persisted. When I went to the park and kind of, was a resident attending, there was definitely limitations in terms of the parking trailers and the trucks themselves, where I think we have in our plan that 4 would fit. Physically watching everybody for a couple of hours, there was a max of 2. It was a very full parking lot. I think it's a beautiful park and it's attracting a lot of people. I think the initial notion of capital growth I'd like to see is just some better signage around where people can and can't park and how they should park. There was a big camper van that came in that was blocking the road. And so there's some egress and exit aspects that I could tell from a safety perspective were of concern. Bathroom's beautiful. You could probably fit a car in it. It's an accessible bathroom, so it's quite large, which is what it needs to be. But primarily with Lardo, I do and have requested, and if staff can't do it, I did say I would go ahead and do it just because a few residents have asked for it for over a year and I lost track of it. So I don't want to keep them holding up. So it's the primary one. If there are certain things when staff can look at it and see if we could do things, then I'd be looking at our capital reserve in that area and seeing what would be doable. So that's the Lardo one. And then Glacier Creek is kind of a broader conversation. The two things at Glacier Creek, There were some operational concerns I won't necessarily mention here, but staff are aware of them. And I can see those changing quite a bit, and it was out of everybody's control. The bigger piece that I'm raising at the Columbia River Treaty Committee is that the debris control at Duncan does not exist, whereas Keenly side and which is Revelstoke and Arrow both have a pretty sufficient debris cleanup program. And so this caught my attention a couple of years ago when I noticed in our capital we had 6,000, not 60,000. That's a good catch. Thanks, Carrie. For debris cleanup. And I was curious as to why we were doing that. The situation of Glacier Creek, the way the water flows, it actually all builds up in the bay of Glacier Creek. And so it's significant. And when I was there again as a resident going just to camp, you couldn't actually access any of the beaches. It was quite treacherous, and even the boat launch was blocked. And so that's when it reminded me, so what's the debris cleanup program and who's responsible for it? I learned through other channels, BC Hydro does not have one for Duncan, which is short-sighted to the other two having them. So that's an advocacy piece I'm kind of pursuing through the CRT, and with BC Hydro, we have a new rep now, Marianne's gone, so I'll meet with Dudley in a couple of weeks and I'll raise that one. And I just asked staff for any info on any agreements, and I believe Carrie indicated we have no agreements on that front, and we're basically incurring those costs under our management of the park, and I don't think we should be because it's significant. It was so much debris. Yeah, it was actually quite unsafe to even try and get to the beach, but we did it anyways. Those were kind of what I brought forward to Carrie, and I think I copied you on all of those. And yeah, or sorry, sure you would.
Yeah, and through the chair, yeah, thanks for those. And as you know, I'm always happy to have comments from whether it's from the directors visiting places and or the public. It does help us. We do have a large number of parks, and trying to get to them all the time. And when things happen, it's very useful for us to get people to help us with some of that information. Typically, with the so there was an agreement a few years before I came on about the boom, and so that was that BC Hydro provided us with some log booms. And I think they estimated the cost about $50,000. But in that agreement, there was no agreement for any type of maintenance or management or things like that. It was years later, really, where we went and found some of those booms because they kind of, I think, got fairly banged around and dismantled the first couple of years, even prior to me being there. So until I found that agreement in about 2012-13, at that point, there was those log booms had been disassembled, really. So we got some of those back up, particularly around the beach area and a little bit over to the boat launch. Again, every year, the minute those come up, the wave action, can damage those. But at the same time, what we started to do is every year, just, it was always in the spring because that's the time that the water was low. And a lot of that driftwood that had been, the water would come up, and when the water recedes, it leaves all the driftwood. So that's where it was usually in the springtime we would collect it, we would pile it and then burn it. Last year was a bit of a tough year because of the couple of reasons. Is one, we really focused on tree management. There was probably 14 trees that were dying and that were of concern to us around the campground. So we lost one of our seasonal employees. So the new hire that we had, he also works at the Nelson District Community Complex, but he's as a certified faller. So we had him work on those trees, which probably saved us about $5,000, which was great. So that was a lot of our focus in the spring. We did get some of the driftwood collected and burned, but not all of it. And we had $4,000, I think, in the budget this year for that. And the problem when that, what happens further up the lake, when that time comes that the water levels come up, if there's a lot of that driftwood, there's not a lot we can do to kind of collect it and burn it at that time, right? And plus it's still really wet and everything else. So by the spring, at least when we burn it, it's a little easier. In the past, we have usually had the attendant who's there be able to clear it at least enough that the boat launch is usable. So that's certainly something that we can work on in the future to make sure that is done, and or when we know that the water is coming up, we can try to have a staff member go up there and work on that stuff at the time. So there are those sort of little solutions. But in terms of the long term, yeah, it would be really nice to know whether or not the Duncan would be, if there's a possibility that there would be some sort of management on that by BC Hydro, because that's really where that would help us for sure. In terms of, we're looking at this point too, the operational needs. Again, we heard you, and we did have conversations. Some of those were addressed, and others we still have some concerns of, but we'll be working on that as we move forward. Just on a note though, the interesting thing about this year is because we had no fire ban. That's always been an issue as we move the fire hazard, the fire ban, all of those things, smoke, which we didn't have this year. So our user fees are a bit higher than even what we estimated. So that is good news. It's a couple $1,000s, I think, higher than we estimated in our budget. So that was at least a little bit of good news. Lardo, yeah, I agree. So the last time I was up there, I know we've had a little bit of a conversation on that, and I think signage would be certainly a really good start on how we can manage some of that. Part of in that management plan, if you remember, there was an option to look at further license of occupation, into the land adjacent. There's opportunity there. I mean, that's a few years into the future of any application anyway, but there is that as we get a little bit more use. And I think a lot of the people that are coming up to Davis Creek as well are starting to obviously use that boat launch. They might be bringing their boats because they don't have one, where historically would have used Lost Ledge. And then they might be leaving them there. Even some information of saying, if the parking lot is full, please use the road and walk in. That's another option. So yeah, certainly some signage, no parking in certain areas, and identifying exactly how you might be able to put, your vehicles could be helpful. And, we can do certain types of, maybe curb stops that are parallel to the parking area. So it says you have to go between these two areas. Obviously, we don't want to have curb stops at the end because we have it as a flow through so that they can drive through and not have to back up. So yeah, I think there's lots of certainly ways that we can help improve those busy times. Again, because I know most of the times that I've been up there, there's maybe one vehicle, if at all any. So it's finding that fine tune between the really busy times and knowing that there's lots of times when there's very limited use of the parking area. So we have that in many of our parks as well, those really high times and uses, and trying to make sure that we, work those efficiently to, have proper availability for people throughout the year. So, yeah.
Would you have any?
Two quick follow-ups on Duncan. I think it's when I meet with Dudley, who is the new Marianne at BC Hydro. I will also reference that spring cleanup is really ineffective because you are hiking anywhere from 80 to 100 feet down into the reservoir. The water is not actually at the level where the debris is on the beach in terms of access until usually late June, early July at the earliest. So I think that's a serious consideration in terms of our time. And I will ask them about the debris removal programs at Kootenay side and Arrow and see what I can get there. In terms of Lardo, what I do want to just ask about is in organizing a community, again, I will be clear that it's not just the one resident who's been asking, that there'd be a group of people as we've done in the past. Carrie, I wasn't sure that you were going to be available this fall, so I'd get organized, but if you can maybe let me know that. And also it'd be great if you could attend as well, just so that you have the visit if you want to. I'd just be happy to have you there if you wanted to participate. So 2 questions, and you can get back to me if you want. would you be available for, you know, an hour-long tour through the park within the next month or two? Maybe not December, November. And you can get back to me if you want, but I'd ideally do it with both of you if you're available.
Yep, to the chair, I'll get back to you on that as well. And because if we did come, I'd like to bring, you know, our planner as well, because that's
Sure.
always really important to, you know, I obviously, Mark works really closely with all of our stuff in that planning aspect of everything. So it would be vital to kind of have Mark as a part of all of that as we try to push some of that planning stuff, not necessarily off of my plate, but as part of my plate, but as well as, you know, involving others so that that's not, you know, solely me trying to, you know, make those operational or sorry, non-operational decisions at times. It just helps to have that second point of opinion. So yes, I'll talk to Mark and I'll try to get back to you on timing. And as you know, our budgets are a little earlier this year than have been in the past. So this will be my full-time you know, focus in the next couple of weeks for sure. Just trying to get all those ready for everyone.
For me, it'll depend when it is.
Okay. Keep you posted.
Yeah, well, I'd like you look.
Couple weeks in advance.
Oh, yeah, at least it depends
Okay.
what's
Yeah.
happening.
And then through the chair, just as I think you may know, we did replace the couple of washrooms up there. So we did actually have really good feedback about those. And the one good thing for us at this point, the hope is, you know, as we move forward and we're able to replace, you know, whether the washrooms themselves or certainly the tanks underneath the holding, you know, tanks will save us a fair bit of money as we move forward in pumping fees. As you know, just to bring a pumper truck up there and pump and get that with some of the limitations, it you know, it's upwards of $4,000 to $5,000 a year at times if we have to do it once or twice. So if we're able to just do it once or maybe once every year and a year and a half, then you know, we'll be able to try to save some money on it. So the new washrooms have those 500-gallon tanks underneath them, which is a big replacement from the, you know, the culvert tanks, which would fill up fairly quickly. So, but we did have good comments about those washrooms.
Good question on the pumping. Carrie, I know obviously we have a much bigger capacity, which is great, but do you ever coordinate with Justin for Hauser and Blakeo pump outs?
Yeah, through the chair, when they come up to Glacier, it's almost a full load.
Oh, okay.
By the time they come up, and because they often have to bring their water truck as well, and that's just because they have to use water to soften things to be able to even pump it out. So it's usually a fairly full truck by the time they come all the way up, but they will coordinate usually with something else up in Ainsworth is what they've told us. So we can get them to do Ainsworth at the same time, then that's usually what we'll do. But it's always coordinated with something for sure when they come up. It's not a one trip just for them. But it's usually a trip for them plus something else, depending on how much capacity. They'll do us first and then make sure that there's enough capacity for whoever else is next, depending on when we get them pumped.
Okay, great. Hiking up a mountain not too long ago, someone was like, why don't they have outhouses up here? And I tried to describe what Carrie so eloquently described without too much information.
Yeah.
I'm good.
So this question is not necessarily park related, but with the new washer bills with the 500-gallon tank, what was the cost of that? Thinking Castle Bay Park.
Well, so the cost luckily is not going to be very much because what we did is we actually used we moved washrooms that we had built at Cottonwood Lake. So when we did the Cottonwood Lake project, what happened is we had CASA at the time, the Kootenay Adaptive Sports Association, had provided, they had a grant to provide some washrooms throughout lots of different areas in the regional district and outside of the regional district that were accessible. So when they came and were helping with our Cottonwood Lake project, they had said we have the washrooms. One of the issues that we had with the washrooms in the end was that, you know, the size was fine, but the doors opened out, which isn't really conducive for snow. And considering Cottonwood Lake, you know, we get a fair bit of snow up there and everything else. We had to build vestibules on the top to kind of accommodate that, but there was still a lot of shoveling that we had to do outside of that. So it seemed appropriate that we were going to put the washrooms that we generally have, you know, as our standard at a lot of our parks, and put those at Cottonwood Lake and move those ones up to Glacier. So they fit perfect up for Glacier, and for the needs up there. Considering in the wintertime, it's, you know, there's not really any use. So, but the washrooms that we build them certainly can provide you information on that. Costs us about $15,000 for a washroom. And that's for the building itself. The tanks are about $5,000 delivered. But they are fully accessible, and they have usually a change bench in them, and I can provide you with pictures and things. So Nelson Tiny Homes, who builds tiny homes, are the ones that have built those last 5 for us that are in different areas. We have one up in Bigelow Bay, has them, one at Roseberry Parklands. We have them at Tagham. We have them at Crescent Valley Beach and at Cottonwood Lake now. So, sorry, and out at Ryandale. So I can send you information if you need on those, and they are quite nice. They're generally either made of cedar or fir, depending on, you know, the cost at the time. And the way that they're made are essentially they're 6x6 posts on 4 corners, which are slotted, and then you can slide the pieces down in, so they're easily movable. You would take the roof off, and they're easily movable if you had to for any reason to disassemble them and move them someplace else. So it's a pretty good design. Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome, because we're actually looking at putting one up there or go as well, if that it works. So perfect. That would be really good. And I will let Scale Baker know that I've asked you for that information. And is that a special RDCK deal or what?
Well, no, I mean, and you know, whether it was done, you know, we'll make sure that it could be done through us to you or something anyway, right? If we had to, but it's just that we have the connection, they have the design, so we own the design, and then, you know, so, you know, that's not an issue either, right? So if someone else locally wanted to build them, we could provide you with that. But the tiny homes, just with the business that they do, and you know, I think they've already made all the jigs and everything else they need to router everything out, and it's, you know, probably a bit more cost effective. But
Great. Thank you for that and indulging me that question for the village. All right. And the last thing is, if we're done with parks, is Imagine Kootenay. We had a meeting recently, and I think you were aware that they got a grant. I put it in my reports. But they got a grant to try and after our last failed the coordinator that we had for our project, they had the same coordinator for Imagine Kootenay, went in directions that weren't ideal. So now have a really good coordinator package, and it's my main discussion was they're trying to attract communities that have either left or have never been part of the program. So we're getting either 1 or perhaps 2 years of free, which is good because we really haven't been able to be active because we haven't had a really good profile. And I think in my last report to the RDCK, I put the link in there, pretty sure I did, to our landing page on Imagine Kootenay, and it would be good, I think, to look at it from both the Castle and Area D perspective, because it's representative of both Castle and Area D. The
Yeah.
fee that we pay. And so I keep pushing for the fact for small communities that don't have the first point of contact, that because we inherited this through the agreement that a former chamber staff member made through that grant that was received. So we haven't had a first point of contact, and it's hard to attract someone. And I have checked with through the chamber. They didn't feel that that was something that they could do. So it's too small a contract for somebody to do on their own. So we need to make sure that we can give them the base information, and I'm hoping that they'll be able to work with the existing members who have not been receiving adequate service to date, because we have not really gotten anything as far as service. I know that the Nelson Chamber has hosted a couple of Castle area opportunities on their landing page, just because they had been approached and to support the program and support our communities. They have done that. But so they'll start working on that. We've got another meeting coming up sometime in November to touch base on things. So yeah, I just wanted to let you know that that was happening. And I don't know whether Tom has reached out to you, or either that, or I can't remember his name from the
Columbia,
Columbia Valley.
Peter.
Yeah, Peter Bork. Yeah.
Yep. So we've been talking about the grant received and the fees, but that's the extent of our conversation.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure that he gives us a zero invoice this year, so that we
Right.
can show that we didn't pay anything.
Right.
Yeah, just in case we go back and wonder what happened.
Right.
Yeah, but that's all we've been talking about is the fees. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I pushed for that because it wasn't clear which year we were getting free. And so we'll see what happens with this process, but you know, the coordinators, the people who are running the process now, I think they'll do a good job, because it's Kootenay based, right? It's not somebody from out of region trying to tell us what we can do better.
Thank you for the link. I was looking at her profile, which I missed. I did read your report, but I didn't click on all the links. And it's even the job opportunities.
Well, because we haven't given them the information.
Yeah.
There's no first point of contact.
Yeah.
There's
Okay.
no one active.
It's pretty much not useful unless you have a first point of contact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there is going to be work in progress now on improving the website. They were working on it when we had the last meeting, because they just had to do the transition between the previous person who was managing the website and stuff to the new organization, so that they will be the ones doing that management now. So hopefully they'll all have the same look and feel, but with appropriate information for Castle area. Yeah. So, you know, I think maybe you and I have to look at it, and if we need to beef it up.
Yeah.
Because it really isn't representative of everything what I look at.
Yeah. Thanks.
So,
but I get that if you don't have someone giving that info, how would you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Links would be a good point of contact with Chamber as being their feeder,
right.
but we can chat about that another time.
And that was it. I just wanted to give you
Thank
a
you.
quick update on what was happening. Yeah, so we had about 6 meetings a year, depending on need. And that's because you appointed me.
Thank you. Glad you're there. I'd be like, I would totally have forgotten about it.
All right. Are there any members of the public? There is one member of the public that I need to see. Are there any questions? You can unmute and ask your question if you have one.
That's one last time, if you have any questions. And, no, thank you for logging in and, finding out what's happening with our North Kootenay Lake Services Committee. And, so our next meeting is scheduled for December 1st, and we may have another one, but that's our next scheduled one. So if we need to schedule another one, just we'll let you know, so you can send an email to both of us.
Yeah, I had a
Awesome.
note that you wanted one in November to discuss the other budgets, the community
Yes.
service parks and fire. So yeah, I wasn't sure if you wanted to adjust the meetings or add an additional one. So let me know.
Can we just doodle that one?
Yeah,
I think Stuart, you're away.
I'm not here for the December 1st one. But you've got library, fire, and parks budgets that you should discuss.
In November.
Or in December, like you could do the December 1st too, it doesn't matter. It's entirely up to yourselves. But that's probably an offline conversation.
Okay.
Yep.
Maybe if we ask Christine to just send us a doodle poll for Monday afternoons and include what would currently be on the agenda so we can determine, do we need an extra one or could we fit it all in?
Right.
Would be my suggestion.
Yeah, because on Monday, the 10th, we have emergency program executive.
Yeah.
That one's out, so it's third, but 17th. 24th is the next imagine good one from afternoon. All right, so can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor? Started. All right, thanks, Christine. I was wondering when I first saw you whether that was a Blue Jays hat. Go Blue Jays!
Yay, go Jays. Nope, not. Have a good day, you guys.
Yeah, me too.